she reached the time period that she is as a senior, you may want to consider applying for either one of these programs. Because with both of these programs, you're getting free money for your tuition and fees. You're getting the stipend for each year, academic year, and you're getting additional stipends for your internships. And you'll have 2 internships if you're selected as one of the fellows for either one of these cohorts. And so when we talk about applying for either one of these programs, you should apply to both of them because it gives you 2 chances and bites at the apple because both of these programs have separate selections committees. And the selection committees both have like 18 people on them, which I cannot be a part of because I actually run the program once the person becomes a fellow. So those 18 individuals are set up in smaller groups where they interview the potential participants in the program and decide based on numerical reviews whether or not they're going to be selected for it. Okay. So next up. So do you guys know anything about the Foreign Service as it relates to the State Department? Okay. So you know that we travel all around the world, serve overseas at different embassies. And hello, how are you? Different embassies or consulates. And so there's a little bit of something for everyone in the department. And so it doesn't matter what your undergraduate degree is. It just matters that you plan to study something of interest to the Foreign Service when you decide whatever graduate school you're going to go to. You do not have to select. You can select any US-based institution across the country. Some US-based institutions also have overseas universities. And so those overseas locations, you actually could attend those overseas institutions and still get a degree from the US-based part of that institution. And so some people choose to go to places like, which ones? Johns Hopkins University, SAIS has, a couple of locations overseas, and there are a couple of other schools that do the very similar things abroad. And I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm Mia. I was on the.
Oh, yes. Hi, Mia.
Joining.
I was like, sorry, I lost her.
It's like at the library because I had just got on another meeting. I wasn't sure if I could make it, but then I was like, oh, I'm gonna run over. So.
Okay, so what year are you?
I'm actually a sophomore.
You're a sophomore?
Yeah.
Okay, I got something for you. At the end, I'll talk to you about that, okay?
Perfect.
And so here are some of the things that we are mainly responsible for in these bullets. The most important one is aiding US citizens abroad. Most of the time, if there is like any situation, whether it's man-made or natural disaster, and Americans find themselves in some kind of trouble, the US government must provide that aid to them. Whether it is helping them find an attorney if they need an attorney, or helping them get out of the country if they need to get out of the country. Other areas are providing security, coordinating on security issues and conflict resolution, management of the embassy, promotion of intercultural exchange and understanding, and facilitating international trade for those economics related folks. So both of the fellowships prepare you for a career in the Foreign Service. So not only are you doing the academics in your graduate program, you also have training on your first summer internship where we provide you professional development to teach you how to, teach you on public speaking, teach you on how to write for government specifically. Because writing academic papers and writing federal government papers are very, very different from each other. So we actually teach you and prepare you for that type of writing ahead of time before you enter into the Foreign Service. We also try to promote diversity. So diversity in a much broader sense than just ethnicity or a person's historical or ethnic background or whatever, right? it goes beyond that. It goes to socioeconomics, goes to regional diversity, and LGBTQ, women, etc. And the reason that it's so broad is because most of the Foreign Service officers, they either grew up on the East Coast or went to school on the East Coast or the West Coast. And so the middle part of the country doesn't get a whole lot of love unless their students, those particular students studied on either coast, because that's where you get the engagement with a lot of the organizations and or the people that are part of this particular organization. And then each particular program recruits 45 fellows. So it's 45 for Wrangell, 45 for Pickering. But on average, I'd say we get about 1,400 applications for each of the two programs, and it's very competitive. So you're competing against a lot of really good students and sometimes young professionals, because you don't necessarily have to be a current student. Some of the people that apply are, five or less years into their current career, and they decide that they just want to do this instead. And so the fellowship, like I said, coincides with graduate school. So in your case, Maya, not Mia, you would apply for the program now, and I'm going to tell you, we're running short on time. So if you apply for these, are going to only be able to apply for one, because the Wrangell program, theirs ends on September 19th. So don't even waste your time. You got a week and a half to do another one. Okay. And I'll talk to you about those dates. And so it coincides with your graduate program. And then obviously at the end, you'll have a foreign service obligation of 5 years. So you get free money for college and you have a guaranteed job at the end. What a great deal, right? And that 5-year deal, usually most people who become a part of the program, they go beyond that and serve out a full career of 20 plus years or so. So they don't kick you out after 5 years. It just, you can decide, I don't want to do this anymore, and then you can walk away without owing any money back. And so the program elements, 1 week orientation for each of the programs, a 10-week domestic internship, and they are staggered of when they actually occur, of when those internships are. The Wrangell program, you'll be working in Congress for either a member of Congress or a committee that has a relationship to the Department of State's mission. And then for the Pickering program, you'll have a 10-week internship at the State Department in one of the bureaus or offices within the building. Then after you finish that, you'll go back to school, and then you'll get a 10-week overseas internship at an embassy or consulate in the area, hopefully in the area that you designate. And I'll talk to you about the 5 cones in a minute. Each of the fellows actually get 2 mentors. One mentor is a person who is what we call a peer mentor. So that person hasn't been in the Foreign Service for more than 6 years. And then you get a more senior officer who is able to talk to you about the career in a much broader sense, because they've been there for 15, 20 years or more. And then obviously we talked about the 5-year commitment. And these are the deadlines. Unfortunately, because the application process usually opens in July, mid-July, it doesn't necessarily it doesn't at all correlate with when school is open for students. And so we don't unfortunately get to travel out to speak to you until September, which is also the same month that both programs are due. But these are the dates in any given year. And so hypothetically, Maya, if you are not able to get through the process for the Pickering this year, spend a year working somewhere and then apply next year when it opens up in mid-July. It's not something, if you don't feel like you have the time to actually do it, don't rush it, just come back and do it later, okay? But those are the dates of when things actually happen for this cycle that's coming in for the next cohort, which we will decide before, in the case of Wrangell, we'll decide before Thanksgiving who the 45 fellows will be. And then in the case of Pickering, we'll decide a couple weeks before the end of school, before you go home for Christmas. So you'll have a great thing to tell mom and dad. And then, as you see, the schedule of when you would actually go to grad school and when you would go to your respective internships. And then finally, where you are expected to enter into the Foreign Service. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if this is like a really basic question, but is the idea of these two fellowships just you're like paid to go to grad school and then you get the job after? Is that like what the fellowship idea is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So originally, Pickering was the first one. It started 31 years ago, and then Wrangell started 21 years ago. And they were both, originally Pickering was an undergrad program, but they switched it to a graduate program because they discovered that, you know, the undergrads were not necessarily ready to enter the Foreign Service. So they decided that they needed a little bit more training. So they made it a graduate degree program instead. And so both of them are graduate programs.
Are you gonna get into the logistics of the graduate programs?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
No problem. Good question. Oh, so these are the eligibility requirements. You have to be a US citizen. You have to have at least a 3.2 GPA cumulative on the 4.0 scale, and planning to enroll in a graduate program in the next fall. So you graduate in May of 2025. You're going to grad school in fall 2025, only unless you have a Fulbright. That's the only way that you can defer this program. If you're selected for this and you also have a
So you can apply
Fulbright.
for both of them and then it
Yes.
just gets, oh.
You will be deferred for that year that you're in Fulbright. And then when you finish Fulbright, you then start this program.
What if you apply for like a master's Fulbright or like a graduate Fulbright and then you want to go to this? Would you just get another graduate degree?
It is the only, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
It's the only fellowship that these two programs, meaning the State Department, is not me, but the State Department will allow for someone to get a deferral for only that other program.
That's interesting.
Because that one is also a State Department.
Yeah, I'm talking about later. It's interesting.
And then, again, the field of study can be a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have to only be these things that are listed up here. Just as long as it is something that's related to what we do at the State Department. And usually you'll let me know whatever that degree program is, and I will tell you whether or not that meets the requirements of the State Department. Because I have to confer with them for them to tell me, hey Sterling, no, this is not gonna work. So, and then I'll tell you. Then you'll pick something else. Okay, and so these are the required things that you have to do to actually have the opportunity to be selected for the program. So personal profile information, that's basic, your biographical stuff. And then the statement of interest and the financial statement. So those are two different things. So the statement of interest is going to be your personal statement telling us why you want to be a Foreign Service officer or why you want to work for the State Department. Example, I, unfortunately, didn't know about the Wrangle program when I was applying to join the Foreign Service. Had I known, I would have gone that way and not owed as much money as I did for grad school and had to pay it back for 10 years. Having said that, trust me, this is a great deal. So my personal statement, I still had to submit a personal statement to join the Foreign Service. In my personal statement, I talked about the thing that got me interested in the Foreign Service. And so way back when, I was a weird kid, way back when I was 9, 10 years old, that was during the time period of the Iranian hostage situation, where a bunch of Americans were in the embassy and the Iranian Revolution happened, and then they were holed up in that embassy for over 400 days. For whatever reason, at 9, 10 years old, this one was actually watching the news every day, trying to figure out what's going on with these people, right? And reading the newspaper. 9 years. Who's doing that? And so that's what got me interested. And so I talked about that experience in my personal statement, that was the catalyst, that was the thing that made me interested in the Foreign Service. And so everything that I did after that was designed to get me into the Foreign Service. Took me 3 times, but I made it. So that 3 times, that means even if you are not selected the first time, keep trying, especially if you're interested in the program. And so that's, in summary, what I wrote about in my personal statement to try to, get them to say yes to me. Yes, we want to see this guy to go for the, the oral assessment, because the first part is the written and the next part is the oral. So financial statement. In your financial statement, most people get afraid if their parents are, upper middle class or well-to-do or beyond that. But you can't always use that as a factor of you're not being needing financial assistance, because you may have siblings and your parents may own this business, and their business has to have their, money roll over and take care of the business, and at the same time provide for their household and provide for your siblings who may also be trying to go into undergrad or some other, or in high school or something, right? But your parents told you, hey, you're done after undergrad, and so you need to explain that in your personal financial statement of why you feel like you're going to need financial assistance for graduates. Because my parents are not going to help me. I don't have a job. I need this help to get through grad school. Then also you need your academic and career highlights, your educational history, transcripts from every institution that you've attended up to that time period. When I said every institution, I mean not high school. I'm talking if you went to a community college, we need to see those as well as your undergrad. And if you already had a graduate degree, if you already have one, we want to see that too. Just because you have one graduate degree does not mean that you cannot avail of this program. You'll just have to decide to take another degree program. Like if you took International Affairs as your first graduate degree program, you would have to choose, I don't know, in your case, MBA, an MBA for, which is very different from the International Affairs, right? Copy of proof of citizenship. Usually that's, either a birth certificate or your passport. And then 2 letters of recommendation. So the 2 letters of recommendation, one can be from an academic professor or advisor. And then the second one is usually from a professional experience whereas you may have worked somewhere and your boss writes a letter, or if you have volunteered somewhere and you did some volunteer work at that particular institution, and this was the person that oversaw your work at that institution. They're going to need to talk about, what's so great about you and, what your potential is as a potential manager or leader or something of that magnitude. There are some other things that you may want to consider. And they're called the 11 dimensions of the Foreign Service. When I joined the Foreign Service, there were 13. Some kind of way, they shortened them to 11. And so those are look those up on the State Department's website, and they will define, help you define or answer questions that the people who are going to be doing the reviewing of your application, those 18 people I talked about, they'll be reviewing your application and determine whether or not you qualify for this program. Okay. And so, what do we offer? So, up to $106,000 more or less for over the course of the 2 years. So $24,000 per year for tuition and mandatory fees, $18,000 each year for your academic stipend, and up to $11,000 per year for your 2 internships. The truth of the matter is, it's nowhere near $11,000 for your internships. It's actually around $7,900 for each of the summer internships, because we pay for the housing, and then that money is separate from the housing that we already provide you, unless you decide that you want to stay somewhere else that's not where everyone else is being housed. And a lot of people decide to do that. They just find somebody that, a relative or something. And then many of the graduate programs that are associated with the fellowships, they actually provide additional financial assistance. So hypothetically, if you decided to go to a Harvard, a Yale, Georgetown, American U, Johns Hopkins University, Duke University, wherever, right? Many of those schools are very, very expensive. And so $24,000 a year for up to $24,000 a year for any one of those institutions, not gonna make it, right? You're gonna owe like $60-some odd thousand beyond that to get through those particular schools. Those schools, actually, because you're a fellow, are likely to give you all of the rest of that money, or very close to the rest of that money. So when you end up graduating, you'll either end up graduating without any graduate school debt or very little in comparison to what I graduated from graduate school with. So to me, it's the best deal smoking if you're interested in this kind of lifestyle. And so some other required obligations, you have to have pass a medical clearance, a security clearance, and suitability clearance. Medical clearance, it's basic. Are you healthy enough to serve overseas? And there are different parameters than when I started. When I started the Foreign Service, you had to be determined as worldwide deployable. What that means is you basically couldn't have any medical issue that would prevent you from serving in the worst place in the world, right? But it's different now. You don't have to have worldwide, because the State Department now has medical hubs around the world where, depending on your medical situation, you can go to a designated place in that area and be close enough to one of those locations where you can get there to get any care that you may need. So worldwide available is no longer in existence. So that's a good thing. Security clearance, it's like any government position that you may be interested in, except for in this particular case, your security clearance that you're going for is a top secret security clearance. Every Foreign Service officer gets one when they apply, when they enter into the Foreign Service. And then suitability clearance is very different from security clearance. You can pass a security clearance and not be selected in a suitability clearance. And suitability clearances are, this will be done obviously by the diplomatic security, but the suitability clearance are senior Foreign Service officers, and they're looking at a broad spectrum of who you are as a person. And does this person meet the criteria of, do we want this person representing the United States? You could tell the Department of Security folks that you smoked pot, you sold pot, or sold something even more dangerous to the human body, but it's been years since you got out of that kind of lifestyle, right? Because you told them, they're going to determine, oh, well, since that person's no longer doing it, and it's been, 5, 10, 15 years, okay, great. You pass the security clearance because you told us the truth. Suitability clearance, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, this is a character flaw, and we're not going to let this person join the Foreign Service. So they can just tell you no. But there is, if you are denied a suitability clearance, there's an appeal process. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, we're pretty successful in getting the person passed through. Little creative writing. Thank you. And then obviously for these other things, we talked about all of those. This one right here about the entry requirements, the Foreign Service Officer test and the Foreign Service oral assessment examinations. So you do not have to, you have to take the FSOT, but you don't have to pass it like I had to pass it 23 times. The FSOA, which is the oral assessment, you do have to pass that. And you get multiple chances to take that exam before you graduate from graduate school. Hopefully you'll pass it the first time, and if not the first time, the second time before you graduate, because it becomes a little bit more difficult for you to actually take that FSOA when you're also simultaneously overseas somewhere working. Now it's virtual, which is a good thing, because you don't have to fly back to the United States, which would cost you oodles and oodles of money to fly from wherever you are in the world to do it. But the FSOA is, pretty innovative how they do it virtually now. But usually when you're doing the FSOA, it's like 3 senior Foreign Service officers, and they're peppering you with questions and trying to get at, does this person really, really, really represent what we want them to represent for the Foreign Service? And so you take that test, but then there's a written part of it, which goes over a lot of micro, macro economics related stuff that you might have to answer. And if you did well in your micro, macro, you'll be okay. And then, of course, at the end of it, it's a 5-year obligation, as we mentioned earlier. These are the 11 dimensions. You might want to take a photo of that. But these 11 dimensions, you make sure that in your presentation of yourself in your personal statement, that you cover as many of these as you can. Doesn't have to be all of them, because guess who can finish the rest of them? Guess. Take a wild guess. The 2 recommenders. Because for example, you covered everything except for leadership and teamwork. Your recommender can talk about that. And that'll cover your 11.
How do you assess the writing skills?
Yes.
Based on personal statement?
Yes, in your personal statement, you can address those kinds of issues. Or your professor, your academic professor, can talk about the writing skills in support of your application. And again, here we are, the graduate school stuff. So the graduate school program must be 2 years full-time in person, US-based institution, but not necessarily physically in the US. Remember that? Focused in an area relevant to the Foreign Service, and you're required to attend full-time. That means some schools are 9 hours, some schools are 12 hours, depending on which school you go to, for a full-time graduate student. So make sure that you're technically full-time with whatever institution that you intend to go to. And approved by the fellowship before orientation, that would be me approving it, approving the program that you chose. Points of consideration, this is very, very important. Don't choose a school just because it's in a particular area. Like I said before, if you choose Harvard, Yale, it's in Massachusetts, it's very expensive there. Can you afford to have the 24,000 plus whatever the school gives you, and then the $18,000 stipend per year and still live there? Can you do that? You need to think about that stuff before you accept, entrance into a particular university. Some people have chosen that, and they made it work, mainly because the school of their choice gave them that much more money that they were able to offset any other additional costs that they may have had. Curriculum flexibility. Does this meet my needs and how I think I want to, and what I think I want to do post-graduation? Support resources of the university, another very important thing to know. The finances that we talked about, is the school giving me more money to help me get through the program with the limited amount of my own personal resources or that of my parents that are not helping you pay, but just might be slipping you a couple of thousand. And then if your school requires a GRE or a GMAT, which most of them do not anymore, but if they should happen to require it, make sure to take that exam. Yeah, the orientation. So it's 1 week in May for Wrangell and in early June for Pickering. These include professional development activities, State Department visits, Foreign Service Officer meetings. You'll be meeting with senior Foreign Service officers, usually at the ambassador or level. Sometimes they may have the title ambassador, but other times they don't have the title ambassador, but they're still at the ambassador level, but they have never been designated as an ambassador of a foreign country. And then obviously other professional development activities and social events. Those are designed to, what that means is the Wrangell, Pickering, the Paynes, and other fellowships that are in Washington at that time. We'll schedule some social event for you all to meet and mingle. Because when you're overseas, you're going to see these same type of people from these various different agencies while you're serving in, I don't know, Ouagadougou. And so the domestic internships, they're 10 weeks each, one in Congress, Wrangell, State Department, Pickering, hosted in Senate or House offices or the committees. And then on the Pickering side, again, it's going to be at the State Department in one of the regional or functional bureaus. Again, during that first summer that you're doing the domestic internship, you'll be doing the professional development. We're bringing in people for public speaking, writing skills, and other skill sets that we try to cover so you're better prepared for when you actually enter the Foreign Service. Then you're overseas. I talked about this already, but both of them, you're at a U.S. Embassy or consulate, and for Wrangell, you completed between your first and second year of graduate school. For Pickering, it is after you graduate from graduate school that you enter into your overseas internship, which is why you enter the Foreign Service for Wrangell in July and Pickering in September. Okay, and then once you successfully complete all of the requirements that you were supposed to complete, you enter into the Foreign Service as a journalist with a minimum 5-year service obligation to the department. again, most people stay, I'd say, in the upper 99 percentile range. There are people that do leave after that 5 years. It's mostly because of health concerns of either that person or a family member or something else that where they decided that, hey, you know, I cannot do this, or I don't want to do this anymore. And then they walk away free. But if you, unfortunately, and there has been 2 cases since I've been working here, and I've been here 2 years and 3 months, where someone decided to leave before the 5 years. One of those persons was able to leave without paying any money back because it was a health concern that she had. The other person, who was a gentleman, decided that he was just done with it. He didn't want to do it anymore. He had ended up having to pay some of that money back that he, and so you don't want to do that.
Is the 5-year service continuous or can be accumulated?
I'm sorry?
The 5-year service have to be continuous.
Yeah,
Or-
yes, it has to be continuous. Because the 5 years goes by really, really fast because if you factor in starting with your training day, your very first day of training, that starts your 5-year clock. And so depending on what country you go to, you could be in language and professional training for 18 months, potentially. So you just completed, you know, a good chunk of that without even leaving the United States. And then you go overseas, you serve your 2 years in that particular country, and then you go off to your next country, that's 2 years, and then that's the 5 years at that point. So that's the end of the presentation. That's the emails for both programs. If you want to reach out to us, the websites as well. And for the 2 of you, both of you are rising sophomore or rising juniors next year. The Wrangle program, I'm sorry,
Rising senior.
Yeah, I'm gonna be senior next year.
you're going to be a senior year. So you pay attention to this for next year, next summer, July, remember July. It'll open sometime around the 2nd or 3rd week in July.
Wait, so this coming summer, July, or next coming? I'm sorry.
2025, sorry. 24.
So that's-
Yeah, this July already passed.
Yes.
I'm sure.
I don't remember.
So July 2025 is when it's going to open up again. For you, there is a program called the Summer Enrichment Program, CP, for the Wrangle. On their website, you'll see for those persons who are rising sophomores or rising juniors, there's a 6-week program. And in this 6-week program, you get to learn more about international affairs in a broader sense. They will talk to you about the State Department. They'll talk to you about USAID. They'll talk to you about all the other US government agencies that do things abroad. So you'll have the opportunity to go to those particular institutions. You'll also go to international non-governmental organizations. And you'll get to learn about the UN, you'll learn about, you know, whatever international non-NGO there is that they have a relationship with for that particular summer. You'll get to go to those places and also do professional development, similar to what the graduate students are getting. And so you might be interested in that for next year. That application opens, I think, October 5th. But it might open up, you know, the following week or something like that. But just check their website for that because I know it's coming up soon. So just apply for it and hope that you get it.
There was another internship that I did see. It was the US-ChinaRelations, I think.
Yes, that is separate from these two programs and the FCP. That's a completely different thing. And there is a diplomat in residence that covers this region. Look up on the State Department website. They have a just type in diplomat in residence, and it will identify who the person is for this area.
Susan, right? Susan.
Yes, you're right. It is Susan. It is Susan. So reach out to her and she can tell you more about USSIP. Okay.
I also was wondering, just because, well, I had actually applied to the US-ChinaRelations program, but I was wondering, oh, sorry, I don't know if it's.
No, this one.
But I was more concerned just like how the process is very selective.
All of them
program,
are.
All of them are.
All of them are. And
Free money is
just
always-
remember,
Yeah.
just remember, all of the ones that are, usually all of the people that are applying to these programs are better than sliced bread. With butter and a little sugar, and a little cinnamon on top of it. And so all of them are like that, you know, they're top level students, and it just depends on how you write and how you present yourself determines whether or not you get selected for it.
And I was wondering, for the personal statement, is it good to maybe try to attempt to write a little bit? I know you said that there's like a way that they teach you writing when you work for the federal government, so I was wondering if when you write your personal statement, there's really, I guess, less, I guess, or get
Well,
more.
there's a short window of how much you can write in it, because it's like 600 words for the personal statement. So you gotta say it, whatever it is you have to say it up front and tell them, you know, and have one of your professors or an advisor to take a look at it and give you some feedback on it before you submit it.
I have another question. So students, regardless their undergraduate background, they can apply for this.
I'm sorry?
Students, like regardless their background, academic background, for example, some students are in anthropology, other students are in, I don't
That doesn't
know,
matter.
psychology, and then
That
they all can
doesn't-
apply for this.
Yeah, they can,
Okay.
because like, what did you, is anthropology specific?
History.
In history?
Chinese
History.
history.
So, yeah, that, your current undergraduate degree does have no bearing on what you do next.
Mm.
So it depends on what your graduate degree program is going to be. Determines whether or not you're selected for this. And so, oh, I forgot to tell you about the 5 cones. So there are 5 cones in the Foreign Service. There's the economic cone, the political cone, the management cone, the public diplomacy cone, and the consular cone. So a lot of people with social sciences usually choose the consular because they have a, you know, a way of talking to people to determine and understanding behaviors to determine whether or not, hey, maybe we should let this person come to the United States under a non-immigrant visa or a immigrant visa, right? Or someone who's studying something that's related to management. That person is going to end up running, basically working with, you know, hundreds of people to manage not only the embassy, but also the consulates in that particular country that they're in, and manage the building of the embassy and the housing for all of the other officers that are assigned to that embassy or consulate. So those people, they get the whole kit and caboodle. Manage people, manage money, manage material, right? Then you have the econ, obviously, they're going to be doing the trade. They're going to be doing anything finance related between our 2 governments and promoting US business in that country. The public diplomacy officers, they're going to be the ones standing up in front of people, talking about educational opportunities or, exchanges, you know, whether they be academic exchanges or professional exchanges between the 2 countries. They'll either bring people from the US to that country or take people from that country to the US so they can spend some time in the US to learn a little bit more about how we do what they do professionally in the United States. And they also have, and on the PD section, they will also have the person who is the embassy spokesperson, who's basically get in front of the television or get in front of a mic for a radio station and talk about whatever the issue is that the news is covering at that particular time. Who did I miss? Econ, political. So political, they're going to be the folks that meet with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or whatever the organization that's very similar to the State Department in their country. Most of the time, it's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And so they're meeting with those kinds of people and in, their Congress, their Senate, or Parliament. And then if need be, in some cases, if you're in a small enough country, like I have had the opportunity to be, you end up meeting with the president and like little old you, president, and you're just like talking to the president like, like we're talking about you. And so those are the types of things that you can possibly find yourself doing depending on which cone you choose to do.
So I just have like a few clarifying questions, but this scholarship program is not like specifically affiliated with universities like the Fulbright is, correct?
No, you can choose any university you want in the country.
So how does that work, like based on, just because I'm not super familiar with like the graduate application process, do you like need confirmation from the grad school that you're applying to that you have acceptance?
No, all we need to know is that you're applying.
Okay.
So because you're going to find out about the decision on whether or not you've been accepted as a fellow before you find out whether or not you are accepted in grad school. So if you're selected as a fellow, as soon as you find that out, you inform all of the schools that you've applied to, because they're going to look at you very, very differently at that point, because they know that these programs are highly competitive. And they're going to say, oh, well, they get bragging points for saying that, oh, I have, this number of people who are Pickering fellows or Wrangell fellows or whatever fellow, right? Because they get to market you to other potential students that don't have the fellowship.
So how does it work? I'm just curious if you have any examples. You mentioned that it has to be at a US-based institution, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the US. What are like some examples of
Okay,
US
so
affiliated
Johns
institutions?
Hopkins University, SAIC, SAIC, has a school in Bologna. I mean, you could potentially be in Bologna. And I mean, we have 13 people that are in Bologna right now.
They also
You know
have a
what?
program in China as well.
There's, John Hopkins is the Nanjing Center. It's a graduate program as well. Now you reminded me. I think they're still running.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's bilingual also.
yeah. So I mean, you could, if there is a US institution that has someplace like JHU overseas, and as long as your degree comes from the US-based side, you can go to that school.
And they're also really good about getting scholarships, because I was accepted into them along with DePaul. They're really, really receptive to American students.
So how does it work if you do a Fulbright, whether it's like a graduate Fulbright or like a teaching assistant Fulbright? Do you have to like, because you said it rolls over, but like, what if the university doesn't want it to roll over, or do they usually comply with that
The
stuff?
universities usually comply.
Okay.
Because you'll tell them like you told
Like,
us.
like specific questions.
Yeah. You'll tell them like you tell us that you have been selected for a Fulbright. And then again, that's bragging rights for them when they're talking to other potential students. Like, oh, we've had so many people who've been Fulbright, so many people who've been whatever fellowship. And they just use it for marketing. I mean, you see it in their marketing material. You might want to look at DePaul's. DePaul will show, oh, we've got, a bunch of people that have been in this fellowship and that fellowship.
Do you know the timeline for Fulbright applications versus these two scholarships? Because I think Fulbright is.
Every year, October 3rd. I'm writing the letters now, so I know.
Yeah, this year is October 8th. And the only reason I know that is because my daughter is trying. So October 8th is this year. And usually you try to get support through your university.
Yeah.
You get selected through your university, but you don't have to get selected through your university. But they, you know, the university likes to have some involvement in it, in the
So the
process.
October 3rd is the internal one, we have internal deadline, and then the national one, I think is October 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's like for the next, like the people who get accepted to Fulbright that are applying by October 3rd are starting next, like.
Yeah, after
right.
graduate. yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's not that one.
And so all of that would dovetail into, like, in her case, if she was selected for Fulbright this year, she'd apply for the Pickering, get selected for the Pickering, and in sometime in late November, early December, she'll know whether or not she's been accepted into whichever one of the universities she wanted to go to. And then, so after all of those things have decided, we want Maya, cheering, we want Maya. Then she will tell us, hey, I've been selected for Fulbright, I need a deferral. She'll write me a letter, an email telling me that. I'll write a supporting memo to the State Department and tell them she's been selected for the Fulbright. And so her timeline is no longer the same as the 2025 cohort. It will start in 2026 for her. And so I would have to then send another letter later on. She doesn't know about this, you don't know about this, but I would have to send another letter later on saying that I have to extend the grant for this cohort, this 2025 cohort, because she's going to not finish until the following year.
Well, it's like a 2-year Fulbright. Is that
Uh,
I'm sorry, I'm just
there-
like thinking
there-
of all the possibilities.
That's a possibility, but I wouldn't push it.
Okay.
I wouldn't push that.
The research one is very competitive.
Well, I know there's the TA ones, because I'm trying to figure this, I was gonna talk to you about it later too, actually. But I know that the fellowship ones are usually like doctoral students, but like, I don't even know what I'm still trying to figure out what I want to apply for, so I really have no idea, but.
Oh, but these programs, these two, not doctoral, only masters.
Yes. But no, it's like, I think you're talking about, there's like specific ones where you can apply through Fulbright through the Department of State, where you like make your own like degree program and like specifically what you want to study in a
Oh, yeah.
specific location.
Yeah, but that's, that's completely different from the programs that most of the other people have chosen for, that are a part of these two programs. And that's, that's when you're right, that's when you get into the, oh, I'm a doctoral student and this is exactly what I want to do. And it doesn't fit in line with any of the other prescribed things that they've already had on their list. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if there's anything that kind of makes an application stand out that I could look into, since I'm kind of like 2 years away from applying. If there's any programs that kind of make an application stand out, or any like volunteer opportunities that are good to get into.
It's like I said before, it's all about what you write about yourself. And what was that thing that got you interested in wanting to join the Foreign Service or interested in international affairs? There's always something, whether it's my family immigrated to the United States. We have a lot of first generation Americans that do this, by the way. My family immigrated from whatever country in South America, and my parents' experience and my experience as a young person, first meeting the consular officer at the embassy and going through that process, made me want to give back to the US because of the great experience that my family had going through that process. Something is, it's not mediocre, it's not minor, but something like that will set you apart from a lot of other people.
With how you write it too.
It depends on how you write it, right? It's like when I told you I wrote about my experience as a 9-10-year-old thinking about, every day watching the news about the Iranian hostage situation. Who does that? I mean, what 9-year-old does that, right? So that separated me from a lot of people because they wanted to know, who is this kid and why were you doing that? Instead of, going to your baseball practice or going to your basketball practice or whatever, 9, 10-year-old kids. It's like, why were you doing that? It's like, they had to talk to me. And when they had to talk to me, oh, that's when I had.
That's good.
Hi, how are you? What's your name?
Good, Grant, oh, sorry for showing up late.
Sure.
I know your appointment.
And what's your degree program and what year are you?
I'm a senior in geography and with a minor in global Asian studies.
Okay, and so are you interested in the Foreign Service?
Yes.
Okay, you missed most of this, but I can talk to you, after we're done with any other questions. Do you have any questions about anything?
Nothing immediately jumps to mind.
Okay, so this right here, make sure you, look at the website, take a picture of it, don't write it down. Gotta love modern technology. And the emails for both of our programs, so you can send us an email, but I'll talk to you after and give you like the shortened 2-minute version of what I talked about, which took like 30 minutes.
Do you mind if we record the session? The
Yes.
part you
No,
are
no, no,
presenting?
no,
It's
no.
mine for us to put it in our YouTube channel, so students where they can't make it today, they can watch it.
Yes, they
Okay.
can,
Okay.
yes, I'm fine with that,
Okay.
and I'm more than happy to come back and talk to you,
Yeah,
or
tomorrow.
do
Yeah.
a virtual program if you want me to.
Yeah. That virtual probably easier for many more students to, maybe in the evenings.
Yes,
Maybe in the evening.
Yes.
students,
I can do that.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. This is sounds so useful. I just feel, oh gosh, I didn't even know about this kind of fellowships.
Neither did I. Had I known, seriously, I'm not joking. Had I known about the Pickering, because that was the only one that existed when I was applying for the Foreign Service. Had I known about that, I would have never not tried.